Yes, the 777 code. This is part of my Phoenician alphabet series. So please watch the original Phoenician alphabet video. Now I want to talk about Zayin, Zayn or Zen or Zay, the seventh letter of many Semitic alphabets, including Phoenician, Aramaic, Hebrew, and Syriac. And the letter gave rise to the Greek zeta, and the Latin and Etruscan Z, and the Cyrillic Z. Now this letter is all about weapons, and it also relates to the idea of blackjack, which of course is 21. Now 777, there was a Benedictine monastery built in Austria in the year 777. And of course, Aleister Crowley wrote a book called 777. And the book is associated with black magic and lays out methods of self-mutilation for the purpose of controlling thoughts and actions. Now, the Tree of Life is a large part of the Kabbalah system, and this was central to Crowley's teachings. On the tree, which is really a chart, there are 22 spheres, or paths, one for each letter of the Hebrew alphabet. Each sphere corresponds to a different idea, such as astrology or tarot cards. Now, the flaming sword is often associated with the numbers 777, since 7 essentially means sword. However, there is no corresponding path from the flaming sword to the Tree of Life, so there is said to be a phantom path associated with 777, phantom events. So they carry the 777. Now in slot machines in casinos, 3 sevens in a row is the jackpot. This is because 7 is supposed to be a lucky number. So 777, the fake event of London, and many other events, because they're phantom events. The phantom flaming sword, you might say.
Right, quick knowledge is about the flaming sword. And the flaming sword, right, is when they take the metaphor, right, of the sort of the sword and apply it to different things, like for example the sun and stars, right? Because when you sort of look at the sun, right, when it's glaring away and that, it it forms like a pointy sort of stars, with the different sort of rays coming off it and all that, and it forms like a sort of pointy type of type of thing, right? And that's where they get the sort of idea of the metals from and all that, from the sort of the flaming sword idea, right? So it's like applying the metaphor of a sword, right, to the sun, right, and also to the stars when you look and see the stars, because they form that type of shape, right? And if a good example of this is when you take that Indian god, is it Kali or Shiva? I'm not sure which one, but the one that's sort of got all the different arms and the sword. It's got like a sword in its hand, it's got all these arms coming out. So it's like the idea of flailing this sword about all over the place, carving out shapes and that, you see what I mean? Forming like star patterns and their sun pattern and all that. So the flaming sword, and it's like Jungle done a video a good few years ago about the flaming sword of Zayin, right? Which is ties in with all the stuff in the Bible, like the ones the sort of Garden of Eden. We've got the cherubs or something. We've got the flaming swords and all this. Right? So stand at the east gates or whatever garden, the sort of Garden of Eden. Right? So this all ties in with that. Right? So basically, the whole idea is to put you at sword point. Right? Like when you see the sort of Buckingham Palace and the sort of Queen Knights, like David Beckham or Elton John or something. It's like putting them at the sword point, right? But they're sort of being nice to these ones because they're serving them. So it's like a nice little pat on the shoulder with the sword, right? But for the sort of the natural population who is the sort of their enemies, right? it's like putting your sword point, right, in a sort of more threatening manner, right? That's the whole sort of game of it. So like the idea of the sort of hex, right, and the sort of the witchcraft stuff, right, comes from basically flailing this sword around, metaphorically, right, flailing this sword around in front of your face, right, so you get sort of distracted and hypnotized and confused by the sort of movement of this sort of sword or weapon type of thing, in front of your face, and they're sort of zigzagging around, and hip you. The idea is to hypnotize you, and putting you at sort of a sword point, like a victim. See what I'm saying? And that's the whole game of it. So when you have the sort of the witchcraft idea, right? Obviously, when these like characters do witchcraft and all that, right? Like the sort of magicians, like Crowley and Gerald Gardner and all that, right? They use ritualistic daggers and knives and swords and all that. You know what I mean? I think in the Freemason lodges they use a sword for rituals and all this, right? So that sort of idea applies across the board there, right? And it's connected with the magic, the witchcraft, right? So it's basically stemming from that, right? So first of all was the swordcraft, right? Which I sort of, I think I done in a previous vid there, right? And then second of all came the witchcraft on top of that. So again, re-emphasising that point, it became more mental as opposed to a physical type of idea. You see what I'm saying? And then evolved, obviously, over the years with the sort of technology which they brought about, all to increase the hex and the sort of witchcraft and the spells and the hypnosis, etc. You see what I'm saying? So all basically a magic, you know, magic basically stemming off the swordcraft idea and the weaponscraft, right? And as I mentioned in that other one, like Tubal Cain, obviously, is the sort of original weaponsmith in that, right? And then you've got like the idea of the magus in the tarot and all that, where the magus is sort of holding a sort of sword aloft or something like that, or weapon or mace or whatever. All the same idea, just holding the weapon to cause the hypnosis and the sort, the confusion in the mind of the opponent and all this. You see what I'm saying? So it's a pretty simple idea, really. You know what I mean? But it's become, with the sort of advances in the technology that they use, like the TV and the radio and the sort of, what do you call it, the stereogram, when they sort of started bringing about music and all that. You see what I mean? It just all stems up a very simple type of idea. You see?